Testing. Testing, testing, testing.
That's great. Good morning. I'd like to call to order the Historic Site Preservation Board. Can we have a roll call, please?
Board member Prescott, present. Board member Bledsoe, present. Board member Williams, present. Board member Rush, present. Board member Eaton, present. Vice Chair Scott, here. And Mr. Chairman?
Present. Can we have a report of the posting of the agenda, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, the agenda was posted last Thursday in accordance with state and local procedures.
Thank you. Public comments. Seeing we have no one for public comments, we'll move on to approval of the minutes. Has everyone had a chance to peruse the October 8th minutes?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I have one small correction. On page 7, under the Palm Springs Modern Committee, the very last paragraph says the home tour is December 18th. That's January 18th.
Okay. I think you're talking about November 12th.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. If there's no corrections for October 8th, can we have a motion to approve?
Second.
Okay. All in favor of the minutes? Aye. October 8th approved. We'll move on to the November 12th minutes, and this is the correction you have, John?
Yes, I'll just restate it quickly. On page 7, under the Palm Springs Modern Committee, the very last paragraph, it says the home tour is December 18th. That should be January 18th. I might have said December, I don't know, but I meant to say January. I think I did.
Okay. Any other corrections for November 12th? Okay. Can we have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the minutes. Second.
Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes? Yes. Thank you. Okay. Chairman's report. Nothing really to update on this month. And we have no public hearings. So we'll move right on to the agenda items. Doug, is there any update on the historic preservation ordinance?
Mr. Chairman, put that on just in case there's issues the board would like to discuss. We don't have any additional staff reports on that.
Okay, thank you. Can we have an update on the Preservation Foundation, Member Scott?
Yes, the Palm Springs Preservation Foundation is planning some events for both February and March, and I'll have more to talk about that at our next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Bledsoe, can we have an update on the Historical Society?
I also have some that will probably be updated in January, but there are Christmas decorations up down there. Please drop by and look at the Village Green. But while I have the time, I also want to bring up that this Thursday we have the Historic Inn Tour. If you're not familiar with the area, it's right behind basically the historic area over there in the tennis club area, and it's a great time to see a lot of architectural gems if you have not done that before, and you can wander around. There are about 20, I think, that are open for viewing, and they have refreshments and music, and it's free to the public. And it's a great way to kind of see that kind of back area back there, which is really so nice. So I recommend that. Thank you.
And when is that?
That is this Thursday from 5 until 8 p.m.
Great, thank you. Member Williams, can we have an update on the Modern Committee?
Well, as stated earlier, the next function is on January 18th. There's a modern home tour of 5 homes here in Palm Springs. It is a members-only tour, so you must be a member of the ModCom group. The next meeting is a Saturday in Modern Way on North Palm Canyon. Anyone who's interested, please come join. And more to come next year.
Thank you. Okay. Can we have a staff report on the Eastmore tie-down plaque ceremony, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm very pleased to report that the Colonial Dames put on a wonderful little plaquing ceremony. The city closed down the street so that the street was closed down. They set up chairs on the tie-down, had refreshments on the tie-down, which is basically almost a turning circle portion of the street. They probably had 30 people there. And they were very pleased with the turnout, and the plaque looks great if you haven't gone by to see it. It's on a nice boulder. As you look from Livermore to the north onto Eastmore, you look right at the plaque. The property owner that has the property right next to the plaque is renovating the property and seems to be very pleased with it. Not only were the Colonial Dames well represented, the neighborhood came out. A number of the neighbors were out chit-chatting. Former Mayor Bogert spoke and had recollections of when the subdivision was created and why this particular tie-down was left where it was. And he said it was the thickest of the tie-downs they had run into, and it was 5 feet thick, and there was no way they could bring it up without a substantial cost. And the mayor was unable to attend, and I stood in for him and talked about really the ties of the community back to World War II, and how not only do we recognize the historic nature of the military's presence in Palm Springs. Back then, we celebrate it today with the Palm Springs Air Museum, from a historical standpoint, implement type standpoint. And we also celebrate the spirit of the culture of the time at the Palm Springs Follies. It's a very strong tie, and then obviously with Veterans Day Parade right in the same time frame. I think they were quite pleased, and in follow-up, I think most of you probably saw the Desert Sun did a nice article regarding the Army and the Colonial Dames, and we just want to thank them. This is, I believe, their second plaque they've sponsored in town, and they do so pretty much on their own quietly, and then they have a very quiet celebration, and they had some media coverage at the event. Mr. Chairman, that completes our update at this time on that item.
Great, thank you. The next agenda item is the Francis Stevens Park designation on the state register.
Hi.
Come on up.
Just move one of these smaller, one of my chairs up here. Let me bring some of my accompanying.
Very quickly, Kathy Marks is one of our new planners, and Kathy, as I've introduced her before to the board, has worked in historic preservation before, and she's undertaken a very strong effort, solicited a lot of input from various people in the community for the city's first application to the state for a state designated historic site in Palm Springs, and she's going to give you an overview of the application, and you did get a copy in your packet, I believe.
Which I hope that you've all had the time to review and get an idea about what I actually did. You can kind of see the nomination has two aspects to it. You discuss the architectural aspect of the school itself and try and follow the changes through time, things that have changed architecturally. It has to be well documented, and we're really blessed in this city that we actually have the original blueprints from the original building. Am I on? Not. And we have most of the blueprints that follow the changes. So my research was completely off of the blueprints for the architecture. There's really no other way of doing it. And I brought just some because I thought it was kind of neat. These first couple here, and we had many, many more from the original, but those were some of the original blueprints. One documents the floor plan, and one documents an elevation. And then, just because everyone loves Frey, I brought one of his that showed the plot plan and some of the changes to the school. So everyone just can take a look, and you can see these are relatively fragile. They're stored in the engineering department in a file unto itself. So that's how I proceeded with this particular aspect of it. For me, that's not particularly easy. I'm not an architectural historian. Sometimes the verbiage gets, I grasp at that and try and go through my architectural dictionaries and find the right word, etc. But hopefully I did a justifiable job and will help with the nomination. The historic narrative comes much more easily to me. And I did most of my research with Sally McManus, and she gave me everything she had. And so that's where I pulled some of the things from old, and that's documented as far as my resources. But newspaper articles, some really interesting things in regards to school papers that the children had actually produced from Francis Stevens School before it was Francis Stevens School, and when they were trying to change, and I was able to pull a few pieces out of that. That was really neat. I mean, she has that. She has some really good stuff down there, and she also had some of the school board minutes, which documents well in a time frame. So I was able to get specifics on time. And I tried to use a cultural, it's important to have a cultural connection. What was it and what it is today, and why is it, why would it fit? Why would it work historically? And I thought we were really lucky because it was truly a hub of the community at the time that it was built. The stage is phenomenal for a school to have that size of gym and stage, and it was built to be that. It had an adjacent dressing room, costumes, etc. It was built that way, and now it's kind of gone its turn of time, and it's back to being a community center and a stage. Obviously not a school, but used for the same purpose, and I think it's wonderful. It fits with Palm Springs really well. Our history has a really interesting little side notes in regards to the glitz of the times and why people came here originally, the Hollywood crowd, etc. And I think that that's interesting. And not only do we have an educational component, we have a neat kind of entertainment and cultural community component with that particular school. And so if you have any comments or questions, I'd love to hear them, and take your suggestions if there's needs to be any type of narrative change that I misunderstood or misinterpreted.
From a procedural standpoint, we're taking this to City Council on the 18th of this month for their authorization by minute order for the city manager to sign the application, and then take all necessary steps to go forward with this. There is always a concern when you start designating properties at different levels that you may end up with another governmental entity trying to exercise their discretion and their process, if any, on what may or may not have to happen to the building. We've been assured, I believe, and Kathy will verify this, from SHPO, that they do not carry any regulatory authority, that it basically gets listed as a state resource, and then the only regulatory tool that comes into play is one that's already in play on the building today, and that's the California Environmental Quality Act, which would require, for significant renovations or demolition, at a minimum, an initial study, environmental assessment that could lead to a negative declaration of environmental impact or an environmental impact report. We don't believe that, at least at this point, that there's an additional regulatory role for the state in the designation. We're going to validate that again, make sure that we fully understand it. It's one of the key questions that we know the council has. Most cities do not like to ever relinquish authority to a county or a state or a federal entity. They like to have local control, and I think that's pretty consistent in most communities in California. But that's our understanding as of this time. We're going to take it to council. We would like to file this very soon thereafter if the council endorses the application. Our goal is to get this listed, experience the process with the state, and also become eligible for grants. I discussed this at our administrative staff meetings when we talk about budgets, because this building is always in need of work. That this is a yacht, this is a collector car, this is something that needs TLC, and it's expensive to own and maintain historic buildings. You can't deal with it the same way you do typical buildings. Everything you do has a premium charge if you're trying to maintain the historic character. You know, this city has a number of city designated sites that we own. It's made a commitment to those sites, and this is one of those. So we're hoping that over a period of time, we might be able to participate in the state or federal grant process. You can't even apply unless it's state designated. And we know that we've got some roof issues that we need to address in the next few years. They're going to be very expensive, you know, and that's one of the objectives here. One of the other things that we're starting to investigate is whether or not, if we wanted to designate a collection of buildings and create a historic district or a landmark district or something of that nature. And then there's some additional opportunities relative to marketing and exposure for the community if you do that. We're just starting to evaluate that. We're advising the council that we're looking at that. And one of the things that we'd like to see, if we can make it work, is to eventually be able to get the designation in Palm Springs up high enough that Caltrans will allow us to have a historic downtown Palm Springs marker on the interstate. It's a longer term program. It's something that we may actually bring in a consultant for. And you know, as we go into our historic site survey, you know, we'll probably do some informal consultations with that consultant and take a look at whether or not we think the designation process of, you know, creating a district or a, you know, geographic area, we would probably, at least in initial staff consideration of this, we would probably only designate city-owned properties in a district. So we take the whole issue of private property out of play and not get into a controversy over lumping in private properties into a designation. I can see that taking well over a year of working with property owners, educating property owners, and be candid with you, knowing some of the property owners. I'm still not sure we would have their buy-in. But I think we have an inventory of enough city-owned properties to make a very strong statement when you take a look at history such as Francis Stevens. I mean, you know, the cultural history, the tie to the Indian community, the tie, you know, from an architectural standpoint in the community. You take a look at the downtown station and its play, the Village Green and its play, and I could go on regarding city-owned facilities that might come into play, so that we could only deal with that issue as the property owner, as well as the entity that submits the application. If, as we go through that, we had other property owners interested in participating, we would welcome their participation. But I've dealt with a number of the property owners of our historic buildings, particularly commercial ones. You know, and they're some of them are uneasy about Class 1 designation locally, let alone what we might do at the state or federal level. And with every program, you know, it's my belief you do what you can do with positive support, and then you try to sell the program and have people buy in as you go. But I think we've got a collection of buildings that would make a very good application, not knowing what all the criteria are for the state designation. I think we'd look good in the presentation, and having original drawings, I think certainly helps, shows our care and record keeping to maintain the history of the building.
Button on? Okay.
There you go.
Don't we presently have the Uptown Historic Galleries and Antique District? We have city markers that
Mhm.
mark right around Tamarisk. So you were saying we were looking to get a historic district. I thought we had one, like there's already markers there. I mean, not to correct you, but it just seems like we have one. If there's
It's-
beautiful signs marking
There's,
it.
there's different levels of designations. You know, we do not have anything formally designated. We certainly haven't gone through the state or federal process to designate it. Those particular banners are primarily a marketing element that has come out of the Uptown Association as opposed to a formal designation.
But with several plaqued buildings.
Without
So
a doubt.
it seems to be a historic district.
Yeah, it has not
So
been.
how can we speed that up to get a historic district?
Well, I
And
think
where
that
will that end
that
or
falls
begin?
back to the issue of what, you know, whether or not as we put a program together, we want to expand it beyond city-owned properties. Do we want to expand it, you know, to privately owned properties? And as we outline a program, we'll certainly consult with those property owners.
Because there's space there, there's people taking down buildings and putting them up, and they're doing it all around historic buildings. So I think it's our chance to make that what it looks like it is, a historic district, because of all the signs. So before it's too late, maybe we can try to save it and keep it a historic district.
That's part of the objective, and
How can we get to that? Pardon, I'm sorry.
well, that's what we're looking at. The first part is we need to test the waters with an application and find out how well we're received. The second step is to explore the state landmark process or the National Register process for historic districts, get some more information on it, understand it, and then find out, you know, one, is the city council interested in going in that direction? You know, without their concurrence, staff probably won't work on that. You know, secondly, then broaden it out and see where the private property owners are. I'm going to tell you that that's probably at least a year's process.
Well, that's what I think we're here to do, though. We're just, aren't we? I mean, I don't mean to monopolize the meeting, but I think we're here to go, hey, wait a minute.
No, I think.
We got a bunch of stuff.
You're misunderstanding that Doug, as Doug has pointed out, the district that you're talking about is just sort of an advertising label.
No, I understand that,
actually
but
apply.
they're all plaqued buildings. I mean, there's
But
a
they're
handful
only,
of
they're only
plaqued
some,
buildings.
yeah, there are only some of them. So to apply to actually have it be a formal historic
Yeah.
district is a big process. And
Yeah.
it takes a lot of work, and it's certainly something to consider, but I just, it
But
doesn't-
our
It doesn't
suggestion,
happen by just saying, oh, it's a historic district.
but
Yeah,
our
and-
suggestion to city council could help, couldn't it? I mean, I just think that's what we're here to do.
Yeah, and
I really
clearly,
do, before things are wrecked and before a Taco Bell goes in on the corner. I mean, pardon, no offense to any business, I like Taco Bell.
well, what we're doing, just so you understand, is with this designation and hopefully your endorsement today, we'll report that to the city council. We put in our council report that we're exploring the opportunity for historic districts, you know, the various programs, and that's something Kathy's been working on as far as understanding, you know, the state process. I think the one thing that, to be effective in a state process, they're going to want to see a good survey of the community, to see the context. And I think that as we lay out the context of historic resources and map those historic resources, take a look at opportunities not only for Class 1 designations, but Class 2 and Class 3 designations. We've kind of ignored them. You know, there are buildings that are worthy of recognition, but maybe not full protection under Class 1 sites, and we've kind of stepped away from that. And that's what the survey gives us the ability to do. I mean, if you take a look at neighborhoods that we have the Uptown neighborhood, we have the downtown neighborhood, we have the Movie Colony neighborhood, we've got Las Palmas, we've got the area, you know, south of Ramon. In every one of those neighborhoods, there's a complex of historic structures, designated or not, that if we could create the energy to create a district. We may have multiple historic areas, some of them locally designated under our ordinance, which we have none yet. Some of them state designated, and we might find that, the collection of resources that the town has when we put it into a story is something that, the community may want to elevate to a national level. I think if you take a look at some of our buildings and who has done something that people would recognize in the buildings, Plaza Theater, the American Legion Hall, the Francis Stevens Park, you start putting together a list of accomplishments with a fine building or an excellent building to back it up, and then a who's who of history in this community. You take a look at the Willows and photographs in City Hall of people staying at the Willows. There aren't many communities that can show that. They might have great local history. They may have a little bit of weaving of national figures in and out. This community has them all over. So I think what we're looking at, and in the past, the board is not particularly been very aggressive on taking a role of saying, let's designate, let's go out and create programs. And I think we have an opportunity to do that. But I think we need to do it steps at a time so that we build the consensus and the comfort level. And that's where we're headed. I think we're in full agreement with your comments. It's a matter of execution. And I think we're taking a lot of real positive steps. And 2 of them are on your agenda today.
Yeah, and how
Just
soon?
a couple of comments. I think that's really exciting. Doug, I personally was not aware that there was such a thing as a historic district designation at the state level. And I think that's something that could really be beneficial to Palm Springs. Just a couple of quick questions. First of all, are there other cities that have that you're aware of? And secondly, if you're making a presentation on the 18th to the City Council, do you need us to be there or participate in any way or touch base with the council people we know in advance?
Well, we've been keeping the council apprised of the work of the board and what Kathy's been doing. And clearly, there's been some interest even with downtown merchants about historic districts and trying to get the potential for advertising out on the interstate, to bring a different level of people to the town that might normally just drive on by. Next Wednesday, a board member, clearly could attend the meeting and speak at public comments about the support for the application and some of the things that you see are important. The feedback I think I'm getting is the council's going to be very supportive of going forward with this. We will probably come back in fairly quickly and take a look at the Plaza Theater. It also has some deferred maintenance issues that we think it would also stand very well in the state grant program. We probably don't want to cycle them both at the same time through a grant process, because then we'll have to choose which one we like the best, and I prefer to probably just put them in line and say we like them both, but we're going to take them through different grant cycles.
Are there other communities that have this designation?
There are other communities. We could do a little research with the state if you'd like to find out. Yes, there's lots of communities that.
Well, and that's the hope. The hope is, like Chairman Isserman asked about, like a copy of the RFP. Isn't that the hope? Is that that's the group we're going to find, the group that is used to other cities with situations like us.
Right.
I hope, right?
Yeah, and we're clearly building our program, from the standpoint of staff resources and the board involvement, and it's our objective to kind of take this from a more passive role to being more active, because I think we've got a great story to tell, and it's something that I think we can generate a lot of support in the community, and when I say that, that's board and council as well as private interests. I think we just, having seen what happens and dealt with property owners, we just have to respect the fact that we've got to bring private property owners in on a more voluntary basis, and I think we could do that by starting with city properties, and then we might find a private property owner jumping in and saying, you mean I might be able to get a grant to help with deferred maintenance on my property? And I think we might build some momentum that way. I've got to give them the carrots, and in the past, we've gotten in a few situations with sticks.
I'd like to mention a few things about this report. Kathy, first of all, congratulations. It's really well done, and I thank you for all your effort. And it's also wonderful to see a building that is over 75 years old, which has changed over time and yet is so wonderfully adaptable to today's uses, from a school to a senior citizen center to a community center to an arts center. So I think it's a great step. I have a question as to whether whether this is just for the buildings themselves or whether it's for the entire site.
This nomination is Francis Stevens School.
Mhm.
I didn't proceed to. There's a mention of the grounds, and that was a question in my mind as to are we doing a park? Are we doing a site? And I really didn't have documentation in regards to, excuse me, the site. If we were doing the site, we don't have photo documentation to be able to determine, was there a ball field over here? Where was the playground? The closest thing that I had is this Frey site plan. Back then, people didn't do site plans like we do now with landscaping. I have the new landscaping plans that were done when it changed to a senior citizen facility, and then and the fountain, etc. So that's your question's well taken. I didn't think the documentation was there to be able to address that.
Board member Williams brings up an interesting point of knowing for our own perspective what other areas have had in the state have had that kind of designation. Like, for example, maybe Balboa Park would have a state designation, and I think the idea of knowing where some of those are and knowing how commercially viable they've been might be a good selling point to a lot of not only the city but the private property owners that may see the designation as limiting their options for marketing their properties. So I think it'd be good if we knew some of those areas and we could actually maybe visit them and get an idea of how successful they are, because that would be great. And like you said, having a freeway marker and being able to have a further marketing device in this economy would be, I think, attractive.
That's also easily found out. The state has a wonderful website, State Historic Preservation Office, and the state landmarks, etc. We could do that research very quickly just online.
What we'll do is we'll do that for your next meeting, and Mr. Chairman, you might want to think about whether or not you want to have individual board members research various communities and get a little bit of information. And then what we're going to be doing, is making sure that in the next month that we finalize this, that we keep in contact with the state, and hopefully get some feedback. Kathy, what's the time frame for the state to act upon this roughly?
According to the Marilyn Lordy is the SHPO representative that I've been dealing with. Excuse me. She is involved with all the state nominations. She's the person that previews, and it's not first come, first served there. They have quarterly meetings for the advisory board that will actually approve this, and she reviews, and the quality of the nomination determines where it's placed in the ability to have the board on the agenda, basically. And the next meeting is February, And there was a November deadline, November 1 deadline to be able to submit, to get on to the February agenda. They had over 200 nominations for the February agenda. Get a clue. Highly competitive here. And so it was like, oh my gosh, when will we get on? Next September? And she said, no, it depends on the quality of the nomination, and that's up to her and how well she thinks it's documented, because they will actually call and say, I'm questioning this, I'm questioning that, do you have support for this, etc. And so we're hoping, of course, that when she receives this and reviews it, I don't want to lay the entire burden upon herself, but whomever reviews this will look at it as a complete nomination. It doesn't need any additional information, and we will get to go with it. And we will be, put someplace, hopefully not at the bottom of the stack, but up close to the top. And so I can't give you a specific until it truly is submitted and they get back to us. And that, she said, would happen within probably 6 weeks, a month to 6 weeks upon submittal, maybe a little sooner.
Do we know what percentage of those nominated actually receive the designation?
No, I don't.
I would also like to thank you, Kathy, for all the work you've done on this. I thought it was fascinating. Having only been in Palm Springs 5.5 years, I had no idea of these other buildings that were added and removed over the years. So, 5.5 years ago, it looks pretty much like how it looks now, except for the addition of the fountain. And I think it's really great that the city sets an example for doing this. I think Doug's point was really well taken, that it's really great that the city moves forward on these and sets an example for private property owners of what can be done. And with the city acquiring the tramway gas station, I think that's another really great example of what can be done. And Bill's point of the adaptive reuse of these buildings is critical for the public or private property owners to realize the future that these buildings can have. They don't have to be replaced. Just out of curiosity, I'd like to know what happened to these other buildings that were added, the Frey buildings, and were they built in the style of the Francis Stevens School, and then what precipitated their removal?
Some of these buildings, you mean, that aren't here now?
Yeah.
When you look at blueprints and then you go to the next architect that did something 15 years later down the line, and you just see that it's not there, you don't, that part is not, there aren't narrative document, or isn't narrative documentation in any historic journal, a newspaper that I could find, or whatever, on what might have happened to the structure itself, or why. Obviously, they didn't need it all anymore. Particularly that the school was no longer a school. Some of those outbuildings were.
So that's when they were demolished. Was when it.
You can only look and see and say, well, by the time it's a senior center and those architectural drawings no longer have this here. So sometime in that interim, the building was removed, but I don't have specifics on dates, times, why, etc. But it would be my take that they were no longer used for. One was, for instance, see this. There were maintenance buildings, a shop. This had to do with kindergarten unit, and a lot of these were removed from the site over here on that west side. And I just have a feeling that maintenance was probably a big issue, and that what are you going to do with them? Are you going to lease those out, or what are you going to do with just some of these little satellite buildings that are actually quite small? Because the main the wonderful part about this, on the positive, is that the school itself, the main structure is still there. Not changed dramatically. Even though there's been a fire, there's been some significant things happen to this. But basically that's still there, and the primary building, which is the next building that was built here on the southeast, that's still there. So what we don't have was this other classroom building called that Frey defines as the southwest building, or these eastern shop, cafeteria, and kindergarten. Those were removed at some time, and I don't know when.
And that's one of the challenges that we've had, and you know, Kathy is very, very thorough. And, you know, some of the questions that she just went through were questions that she had. And, you know, our concern is, will the state have those questions and ask us to come back and document all those? I'm not sure we have the staff resources to get into that level. So what we did was we tried to craft this application so that it addressed the primary buildings, that addressed the cultural activities at the building, put in as much buzz as we could to catch people's attention, to set the property aside from other properties that they might look, and you know, they may be wonderful historic properties, but they're not going to maybe have the ring that this one has. So, you know, those are the types of things. What we're going to do is submit this one. We know that there are some areas that they could question. We don't know, and to some degree in our business, at some point in time you need to say, let's give it a try. If they come back and ask for a lot more information, you know, the next time we do one of these, we'll probably have to do it with a consultant, where we can have somebody come in and do the hours and hours of research. Kathy's put a lot of time in this, but certainly not the type of focus that you would get if you brought in an architectural historian and said, you know, we want you to spend X hours and we want you to uncover everything. So we're a little bit of a risk, but I think we've got a good application, and it's got a real strong site. So we think we'll give it a try. And some of these buildings, you never know, may have been on plans, but they may not have been funded. You know, and sometimes you think things were there, and sometimes maybe they were just on plan. So we could continue our research. We're going to do a little bit more. We've got a couple of places we can look. We may go ahead and file it and just keep adding to our knowledge. So if they ask the question, maybe we have a few more answers.
I have one extra little comment, if you don't mind adding in regards to that. There's two components, as I described earlier. There's an architectural component. You try and justify what you can architecturally. This is a building that has been changed many times, so that, you know, there's many different small changes, etc., that have happened. So you try and document that as well as you can, but a nomination can stand unto itself as a cultural nomination, as a historic nomination, and I perceive the strength of this nomination not really 100% in the building, but in what the building represents culturally and historically.
Does this say that enough? I know, because I think that's a great aspect.
I think it does.
Do you think it does, though?
Obviously.
No, I think great. I think this stuff is great, and I thank you, because I think it's an incredible place.
To make that emphasis in the historic narrative in regards to the cultural significance of the site and of the school itself. Not really the site, the school. What the building represents culturally to the community. Okay?
Yeah, we're gonna see how our goal is to test the state and see how comfortable they are. I mean, this is a very concise, straightforward application with good exhibits that basically show condition of the property, both in plan as well as photographic view. And we might find that they want books. If it's at that level, we need to know that. But I think, our discussions started last year with SHPO on grant programs. And when we described this property to them culturally, and the condition of the property, even our first phone call, we received nothing but encouragement. One, from the standpoint of what we described. Two, they said they would like to have a property in Palm Springs on the list. And I think that was a pretty strong statement back to us, that they were excited. They've had conferences out here. So I think the state folk know resources in this community and have a good feel for them. So hopefully they have the same level of excitement that we do.
Doug, I have a question for you. I understand the main benefit to getting a state designation is to be on that grant list, hopefully.
Have the opportunity to file.
If you are a private owner and you wanted to go through the grant, hopefully get to designation and grant process, is it different than a municipality going through the process of trying to get the grant?
We haven't investigated that, but I didn't see anything in the stuff that we looked at, and Jane looked at it a little more detail than I did. I didn't see anything that would stop a private individual. And we'd probably, if somebody wanted to file, we'd probably work with them on a co-grant.
Oh.
Since it's a city resource, we'd have to take a look at how we might structure that. And sometimes if you structure the grant application with multiple parties that are encouraging, it has a stronger statement to a committee that has to figure out how to spend a little bit of money with a lot of applicants. Jane, did you see anything? No. I think actually it would be, to have that co-grant, and we do that with the Agua Caliente Band of Coy Indians. We've partnered on a grant that actually pulled us, in our opinion, way up on the list because it showed a very unique cultural tie.
Can we we need to make a motion on this, correct?
You could make a motion to support the application.
Okay. Can we have a motion, please?
I'll move that the application be supported by this board and encourage Kathy to continue on.
Yes, thank you. I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Approved unanimously? Thank you, Kathy.
Oh, thank you. I certainly appreciate the board's
Yes.
support very much.
It's
Must be kind of fun, too.
Oh. This is the real perk of our job.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, we'll move on to the selection of the subcommittee for the Historic Site Survey RFP. Doug, can we just have a update on this before we do the subcommittee?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the RFP has been reviewed by the board and approved by the board as well as the council. We're working with our purchasing department right now to get this out on the street. There's obviously interest out there. We get phone calls from firms that do this type of work asking about it. What we need is one member from the HSPB to sit on the selection committee for the consultant. We suspect about a 60-day window as far as getting proposals and making selection.
Well, we're going to be making well, can I give an update on the RFP, actually?
Sure.
I just talked to Harold Good yesterday,
Okay.
and we're actually working together and getting it out probably sometime by the end of this week. So,
Great.
the consultant selection we've written on there will be probably be sometime in January. If we release it, probably, we were thinking Wednesday, but maybe Friday, so it'll be sometime in mid-January, and then sometime thereafter, there'll be the consultant selection.
Can I ask a question about it? Because what we saw the first time around is not exactly what is here now. I just have a question that I don't understand. Do you have a copy of it, Doug?
I don't. Jane probably does.
Just, I'm sure that clarification, I have a copy, yes. You mailed us a copy. Right. At the last paragraph on the first page, it states, the consultant may propose a higher number of properties. As part of the 200 properties surveyed with Form A, the consultant should identify potentially significant resources under 45 years of age with the appropriate National Register status code. Can you explain what that means?
Well, what we've done is our ordinance talks about, 45 years or older as being one of the thresholds. And the board has wanted to make sure that we could take a look at 45 years and newer. So the idea is to try to broaden that through the proposal. Otherwise, if they just look at our ordinance, and at one point, we parroted the information in our ordinance in this, and the board was concerned about it, so we kind of.
Well, my question was, and perhaps I should have expressed this earlier when I received this in the mail, that we have 200 properties surveyed with Form A and 50 properties with Form B. Am I reading that properties 45 years of age or less are only qualified for Form A, or can they also be surveyed using the more exhaustive Form B?
They could, if they feel they're the stronger properties, they could go to the Form B. I don't think when we deal with proposals, we're gonna have to be that fine. Each individual company will review our ordinance. They'll probably do some poking around in the community. I think they already have. I think we'll find that most of the firms that make a proposal will understand the ranges, and they're gonna ask some questions. So, we tried to word this in a way to give the opening, and it doesn't necessarily have to be only Form A. And, we'll probably be giving direction on which sites go to Form B. They're not gonna do this in a vacuum. They're not gonna get a contract, disappear, and come back and say, here's our report. They're gonna be in our office on a very regular basis. We'll probably give you progress reports as they do their work. But what we need now, just, when we go to hire a consultant, it is a very prescribed methodology that our purchasing department manages, so we don't make a mistake. It's not a selection of the board. It's a selection of a committee that makes a recommendation to the council. And, so when we get all the proposals in, we're not gonna be able to come and ask the board, which one do you want? You're gonna have to delegate your role to a subcommittee member that will, we'll probably have one planning staff member, we'll have somebody from purchasing, we'll have an HSPB member, and we'll probably look at maybe pulling in one community member to sit. And it's a very formal process of scoring and mathematical calculations to figure out who the top ones are. Cost will not be, the prime issue, although everybody that proposes this will figure out what their budget needs to be. If they don't, they didn't read the information and they didn't do much homework. So, it's a little bit different process than what you might expect once we go to select a consultant, because it has to be done a certain way according to our ordinances. Us planners only hire consultants once or twice a year, and we rely on Harold and his staff to make sure we do it right. And so we need a subcommittee member at this point, which becomes the representative for the board.
I have two things. One is, has the funding been received yet?
Not yet, but we anticipate it in the next few months. The timing of this appears to be falling right in line, that very soon after we select a consultant, we should have the funding be able to proceed.
Okay. And then the other thing is, board members, I think our chairman should be our representative. And I would nominate him, so.
Yeah, we trust him. He's a good guy.
Thank you. I'd be happy to be the HSPB representative. I guess then what I would like to know, should we have a subcommittee that I report to, or just report to the entire board?
You're going to report back to the board, but
Okay.
you're only going to be able to report back what the decision of the committee was.
Okay.
You've got to be real careful on how we hire people. It can be very competitive, and if we make a mistake, it could jeopardize hiring the best firm.
Then, okay, my second question then would be about this community member who may or may not be a representative to this committee. Does the HSBB have any input on who that member
If you'd like
could
to,
or
you
would be?
you certainly could, or you could leave it up to us to consult
Okay.
with you.
Well, I mean, one person that I think an obvious choice would be Sally McManus from the Historical Society.
We'd love to have Sally
Because
participate.
she's one of the few people I know who really has, such a broad understanding of what's, happened in the community. And, especially with the older buildings, because that's not something I have a particular expertise in.
The board's comfortable? Okay.
Okay.
And we'll report back if there's any changes in this, relative to what we need to do purchasing-wise. We'll keep you posted, but, I think that we'd have two great committee members, and the people that you're comfortable with.
Okay, great. I guess that's at the end of that agenda item. We'll move on to board and staff reports. Are there any additional staff reports?
Two brief update items, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, please.
Okay, on the Ralph's building at Sunrise and Ramon, we've issued some permits for demolition of peripheral structures, walls. They're starting to do some of their site work, and Ralph's is getting ready to announce a schedule of closing. We're in the process of working through with the developer, bringing on board the individuals that will do the site documentation prior to demolition of the building. And we're working on the specifications for the dismantling of the portions of the building that are going to be reused in the building. I can tell you that the property owner is working very hard to put a good team in place to accommodate those things. And with regards to the dismantling and storage, they're going to basically document, number, and very carefully take the building apart. I'll just caution you, metal that's been in place for a long time, sometimes when you release whatever tensions there are, you get some movement in the metal. So it's a little bit of a risky venture because you just don't know what's going to happen when the tension's relieved from the building. It's not a post-tension building. It's not structurally designed in a way that things have been deformed intentionally, but you just never know when you start taking metal pieces apart.
Doug, could you tell us a little more about what actually is going to be reused? I know there was a great deal of discussion.
Yeah, a
about
portion of the arcade along the front of the building. I don't recall the exact pieces are going to be used in a portion of the building on the front. And the project architect is involved, as well as the contractor that will be doing the disassembling and the storage. And we want to make sure that to the greatest degree possible that mistakes don't occur, and some guy with a big bulldozer doesn't hit the wrong parts at the wrong time. And I can tell you that the demolition contractor's been in and spoken with us. We're doing this very carefully, and the property owner, I can tell you, is very much on board with doing the right thing. They've spent a tremendous amount of money to get to this stage, and made a strong commitment to the community. They're going to do the right thing, and I think they're following through in a very high fashion right now. Mr. Chairman, the second update is the brochure. We're still waiting for, I believe, 1 or 2 photographs. And once we get those, we'll send out a quick copy of the check prints to the board members. We really need to get this in the print shop, so when you get it, if you don't comment within a few days, we're probably printing. We just have to get that out. We're telling our customers right now, we don't have anything to sell you. And we're just rolling into a time of the year where we need to put that out, and would be a great stocking stuffer for a lot of people. So we're trying to do bring it up to current with most, if not all, the historic sites, and trying to procure some photographs of buildings that I think everybody would be very proud of if we can get the permission to get those photographs in.
Thank you. I have one question and one update. I noticed driving by that the copper awning for the Louise's Pantry that we had discussed at previous meetings has been installed, and I think it looks fantastic. I think was a great solution to what to do with that element of the building.
Is the board comfortable with the end result of Louise's Pantry? You all gone down to look at it?
Yes, I saw the tile work recently, and I was impressed with that. I don't know how much of it is old and how much of it is remade, but it works.
Yeah, if we're ever out there, I'll show you what was remade. It's very hard to find. They rejected several runs that just were off a little bit in color, and if you have it pointed out, you can see some of the replacement tile versus the originals, but it's very hard to find unless you're just really looking in fine detail.
I'd just like to say I'm just glad that someone is in the space, because that means it's not in danger of being torn down. And sometimes we have to be accommodating, and mistakes get made, but it sounds like this builder was anxious to try and do the right thing, and I applaud you, Doug, and the people who went down and looked at it for what you did to make it come about, and I think it looks great.
Did you make those tiles?
No, they found a fabricator that does this in Mexico, and Mr. Westman sent one of his employees down on multiple trips to actually watch it in the factory to make sure it was right. I'll just make a comment. I've done a lot of work with Mr. Westman on new buildings and renovations. He was on site on a regular basis. I probably met with him 5 times. It's very rare you get an owner that has a hands-on feel, and all through this one, even though there were some glitches, his commitment was to make sure that the building was real strong at the end, be as authentic as he could and still have a viable use. And if you had any idea what that basement was like compared to what it is today, it is an absolute gem. The basement food prep and food storage, when you see how difficult it is to just get down in there, you wonder how they could build what they did in there. It is phenomenal. And it'll be a good restaurant for an awfully long time, I believe, because the infrastructure is brand new on the inside of the building. There wasn't anything left on the inside other than the shell of the building.
After that investment, they can't afford to close it now. So.
Well, it's one of those ones that, I think the best test was the first day they were open, the patio was full. So that's going to be the key, and I think they've got a wonderful location. And we may bring some operational issues back to you over time on things that need to be worked out at the Plaza Theater, and this is going to be a fine-tuning project over time.
Thank you. And then I had one question. Since the City Council moved last week to acquire the Tramway gas station, I understand part of the acquisition involves some kind of additional structure or some kind of adaptation to the space. So I'm assuming that at some point that will come before us. I have no idea what stage this is at.
Yeah, it's certainly a Class 1 site, so there's no way to avoid the HSPB and the council's involvement. So I think I'll make that admission very upfront. We're currently looking at proposals from 3 architectural firms. I can't tell you which 3. I think you will be very pleased with all 3. We think that between the 3 proposals, you could not go wrong. One of the issues that will be their challenge is to add space. It's probably a little less than half the size that we need to accommodate what we have today, not to mention what we need in the future. I think the staff has some concepts and ideas, but most projects are successful because of the teams you hire to work on them. And I think all three firms that we're interviewing are very sound, very knowledgeable about the local area, and clearly knowledgeable about the work of Albert Frey. So they're a good group, and we'll be interviewing. And we haven't taken full possession of the building yet. You will see some fencing go up on a temporary basis. There's been some vandalism, so we're going to move fairly quickly to try to block some access points. The architect, and part of their scope of work will be to make sure they protect the historic character. The time frame for the council, they want to be in the building with an expansion in a matter of months. So we're going to bring things to you, and it's going to be on a very fast track. You're not going to be able to wait and think about it in between meetings. You're going to get information, and be asked to make a recommendation to the council, and then they're going to have to make some decisions on how they deal with the building. But to meet the schedule of when we need to be in it, it's going to be a very fast design as well as construction process. That doesn't mean that anything gets compromised. It just means we all have to work very focused, very quickly, and be ready to deal with the information that comes to each meeting. Otherwise, things drag on. If there's a need, we may need to call a special meeting to keep the flow of the project. So we may do something outside of the normal schedule to keep this one on track.
Is it safe to assume that wall is coming down?
Well, I never try to tie the hands of a design team. We hire good design teams for a reason. We know that just in their prodding, or not prodding, but asking of questions, that there's a range of belief. I think most of them know that it needs to be opened up, but I think some of them might think that a little bit of peekaboo might not be a bad relationship. And I think almost everybody I talk to that looks at it from outside questions the wall, and then you get on the inside and you realize why they did it, for their use, that it made a very special space on the inside. So we may get a combination of things, but definitely you're going to see a lot more of the building. I can't imagine it being behind the veil the way it is today, but it might be more peekaboo and create vignettes and highlight maybe the features of the building by selective use of where the wall is and isn't. But that's what they're hired to do. And you got three good firms. Every time these firms are on a project in the city, it makes staff's job much easier because they're great design teams.
Okay, so we'll just be saying the team that that is selected.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, there's not enough time to consult. We've got to get somebody on board, and they're going to get a very short time frame to get preliminary plans in order that go to the Planning Commission, HSPB, as well as up to the council.
Well, it's just so great that the city is acquiring it. I know when we did the interviews for this board last summer, virtually every person we interviewed, when asked what suggestions they had for the city, mentioned that station should be acquired by the city and turned into the visitor center. So it seems to have the support of virtually the entire city.
Yeah, we came close a few years ago, and it just was not good timing budget-wise. We were in negotiations, and it just didn't fall into place. And to be honest with you, we probably got even though we're paying a little bit more than we would have then, we're getting a much better value today because of the improvements that were put in by the previous tenants. It's pristine right now. You couldn't start with a better base to then build something that I think will be a tremendous asset. And we're already getting inquiries from other entities that would like to be near it or in it, which might give it a whole different sense of importance in the community, where it ties a whole bunch of elements: historic preservation, tourism, cultural resources, as well as maybe some other things that will be very good for marketing the community and make people stop in volumes that we've never seen.
Well, it's a great boon for the north end of Palm Springs.
And to think it was gonna go under with Mark Bragg and his evil Shadow Rock project, that was almost happened. Almost got demolished as his entryway to his evil project. Ill-fated, hopefully.
Do we have any other staff reports?
I have a question. At last month's meeting, we reviewed a proposal for some work at the Neutra Miller House, and it basically was turned over to the staff to make the final decisions. Has anything happened?
As of right now, Catherine is working on putting together a site plan to submit to us for official architectural approval, but there's been no action as of yet.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other business, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.